Good to go.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January regular meeting of the Annapolis Education Commission. I'm Jeff McCrease. I'm the representative from Ward 2. I'm the proud parent of 5 present or former public school students. We've got an agenda that was distributed via email. Let me read it out for the group here. Point number 1 is a call to order. Number 2, roll call. Number 3, approval of the prior minutes. Number 4, comments from Dr. Joanna Tobin, our Board of Education member. Number 5, committee reports. 6, old business. 7, new business. And 8, motion to dismiss. Let's start with the roll call then. Ward 1, Ms. Brianna Griffin.
Hi, Brianna Griffin, Ward 1, Secretary.
Okay, Ward 2 is Jeff McCrease. That is me. Ward 3, Enid Collison-Lee.
I'm here, Vice Chair.
Ward 4, Kayla Golder.
Here.
Okay, good to see you, Kayla. Ward 5 is currently unfilled. Ward 6 is unfilled as well. Ward 7, Laura Booth.
Present.
Ward 8, Jess Packler.
Present. Ward 8, Eastport and Annapolis Middle Mom.
All right. At large A, Miss Odessa Ellis.
Oh, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. That's a wonderful
Oh, okay.
chat you have tonight.
All right.
Something wonderful as always. At large B,
Thank you.
Pam Bukowski. Okay, at large C, Ms. Janet Norman.
Janet Norman, Annapolis High PTA president this year.
Okay, at large D, Mr. Ken Starks.
Hey, present.
And Alderperson Sheila Finlayson. All right, not here yet. And Ms. Grace Matthews, a prospective member. Grace, were you able to log in? No. Okay, Madam Secretary, I believe we have a quorum here, so we'll continue on with our business. Next on the agenda, number 3 is the approval of prior minutes. They were distributed electronically to the members of the commission. Are there any corrections, deletions, or other notes on that? Okay, I'd like to accept a motion for approval of those minutes as published then. Could somebody please do so?
I move to approve the
I'll make a
December
motion.
minutes.
Okay, and there's a
As
second from Jeff
distributed.
Packler. All those in favor, raise your hand, please. Any opposed? Okay, they'll pass unanimously. So approval of prior minutes is completed. Number 4 on our agenda, as always, is a standing invitation to Dr. Joanna Tobin, who is the elected member for the Annapolis area to the Anne Arundel County Public School Board. So Dr. Tobin, we welcome you again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm delighted as always to be here. And obviously part of why I'm here is to listen and make sure I hear what I need to hear and bring things back. But I also wanted to pass along a few things that you may be probably aware of, but just to highlight them for you. First of all, the budget hearing held by the county executive and our county councilwoman, Lisa Rodvian, will be on February the 8th, a Monday at 6 p.m. As with all things this year, testimony can be done virtually, so you don't need to leave your house, but it's a really important time to advocate for our district. I'm thankful that Ms. Norman and Ms. Packler came and provided testimony at our budget town halls for the Board of Education. But as you know, the process is we approve a budget, which then goes to the county council. So the second layer of advocating needs to happen as well. So any and all of you, I hope, can have an opportunity or will take the opportunity to come out and speak up for the district. It's
Joanna, can I ask you a question on that?
Yes, ma'am.
I watched the town hall for District 5, Ms. Lacey's district. And it was really good, the people who did public testimony. You have the ear of the county executive for 2 whole minutes. And
Yep.
effective. Do you know how we sign up for those slots? And is there a limited number? Like, are they only taking 15?
I'm not aware of a limit on numbers. I know that I should have it in front of me. I don't. I can circulate. I can get it to Jeff, and perhaps he can circulate it to you. There is a county website. There's a county link
Website to go
to. It's very easy to go to, but I will get it to you, and
Okay.
and that way you just sign. It's like any of these things. You just sign up. So it's. I mean, I did it. I've done it. The last couple of years. County Executive Pittman started doing this, and it is tremendously valuable because you really do have an opportunity with both your county council person and the county executive there.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Excuse me for just a second. I have a Pam Bukowski in the attendees. Is that someone I should admit?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, so I will be sending that out. Just a couple of things. As I'm sure most of you are aware, we are in the process of figuring out our next steps with the school system. So our next board meeting is next Wednesday, and we will be hearing the superintendent's plans with regard to reopening in a hybrid structure. And obviously there's much swirling around that right now, but that is what will take up, I think, most of the board meeting next Wednesday. So that will be at 6 p.m. Our board meetings throughout the rest of this year are going to be at 6 p.m. Where we will be in the building next Wednesday, but obviously testimony will not be happening in person. Because there are only a certain number of people who can be in the boardroom. So we will be there with key staff, but it will be, as always, available virtually to everyone. Finally, you may also be aware, and I know this has been an issue very much for the District 6 and the Annapolis cluster. At our last meeting, we voted to have the superintendent present a plan to us no later than, it's worded strangely because of other considerations, but at some point in April, a plan to change school start times, which, as many know, has been a long sought goal. Particularly in this district. And so we will be hearing that with an eye to implementing it no later than the beginning of second semester next year. And so that will be occurring in April. Obviously, you will be hearing more about that moving forward, what exact meeting that is and so forth. But those are sort of some of the big things on the docket right now. And I know many in this group have been advocating for changing school start times for a long time. So hopefully we're taking that next step that needs to happen. So keep up the advocacy, however, it doesn't hurt. And if for any reason you find you can't get on in time to sign up for public testimony slots for the board meetings, you can always email all of us. And when you send something to the board office address, Ms. Howell sends that to all of us. You can also always send directly to board members, but I certainly read everything. I may not have time to respond to everything. I think, I believe most of you know this, but just for the record, we're not like state legislators. We don't have staff. So all of our emails, everything we handle ourselves. And so these last few weeks, we've literally had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails. So just because you don't hear back doesn't mean I'm not reading. I'm reading every single one of them. So thank you for sending them and keep sending them. I think that's pretty much it that was on top of the list. Also, just to say, Laura Booth and I both testified today for a bill that, again, I think is important to this district with regard to bus capacity. And we were in front of the Senate Committee on Judiciary Proceedings today with the aim of making clear that it is only in emergencies that children should stand or crouch on a bus, that should not be routine operating procedure. So those are some updates. Yes. So I'm happy to take questions or anything else that anybody has to.
Thanks, Joanna. I see Kayla and then Odessa. Kayla, please.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I was unaware of them, people wanting to change the school start time. What are they trying to change it to?
So for high schools in particular, since I know that's your where you are, it would mean that high school would start no earlier than 8:30, which is in line with the recommendations of the American College. Yes.
That means we wouldn't get out till like 3, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would shift the day, but the recommendations of the medical community have been for a long time that it's actually really unhealthy for adolescents to start school before 8:30.
My only thing is like with starting later, that gives us less time to do homework and combined with sports, which creates more stress. So I feel like that starting later would be unbeneficial, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, this has been a matter of a lot of discussion. As I said, we are following here the medical recommendations because of what medical science tells us about adolescent brain development and the need for sleep, quite frankly, and the circadian rhythm when adolescents fall asleep tends to be later than younger children. So this has been, there's a lot of research on it. It has been a long, long process. Meanwhile, we have elementary schools in this county that in many cases some of them start as late as 9:45 in the morning. And elementary children are kind of the opposite. They tend to be up early, at their best early. And when they're still in school trying to learn math at 3 p.m, they're just too tired. And so this is an attempt to align school start times with what we know to be what the medical profession is telling us is what is actually healthy. Because there's all sorts of research about behavioral issues, depression, physical effects of starting high schools too early and students not getting the kind of sleep that they need. And the other things will have to be adjusted, they will. And sports is one of the things we're working out, but we feel our first duty is the health and well-being of our students. And we have to sort of proceed from that. When school schedules are actively going against what the medical profession tells us is actually healthy, it undermines one of our most basic missions, which is the health and well-being of our students. Yes, so I don't know, Mr. Chairman, who was next?
Odessa, and then Enid, and then Ken. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay.
Enid, do you have a follow-up? Excuse me.
Yeah, Kayla, did you have a follow-up?
Enid, you're muted here. Do you have a quick
No,
follow-up?
it was just, in my personal opinion, I'm not for that, but I'm not a medical professional. I just know that 7:30, talking to other high schoolers, in our opinion, it's more beneficial just because of how jam-packed our schedules are. And then just waking up at 8:30 and getting out of school later, we're still going to be up and we're still going to get that same amount of sleep, no matter if you change it, because that's just going to mean, oh, we can stay up later because we don't have to go to school until 8:30. So in my opinion, I don't think it's beneficial, because you also have to look at the fact that in college, you still wake up early. For the rest of your life, you're waking up early, and high school is meant to prepare you. And so making sure you're in that routine of waking up early and knowing you need to get stuff done, I just think waking up at 7:30 is more beneficial, even if you don't like it.
Well, as I said, I know there are many opinions on this. there are many kids who are literally waking up at 5:30 in the morning because of the length of their bus rides and so on. So you have to back up from when school starts to what the reality is for when people have to get up. So it's, as with all these decisions, we have to weigh sort of an entire district and the kind of broad needs of the population. But I appreciate your offering your thoughts on this. Thank you, Kayla.
Enid, did you have a follow-up?
Grace has been trying to get in for a while now. Mark, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you, yes.
But can you see me?
No.
Well, I'm on. I don't know what the problem may be.
Okay. Just look at the bottom. Do you have your video on?
Yes, I do. See a hand. I see your name.
You're actually on twice, Grace. Maybe that's the problem. You're signed in twice.
Okay.
And just follow up real quick, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Ken.
Now, Joan, you said it's evidence-based based off science, correct?
Yeah.
And I get that. It's based off the model that is at the moment, correct? It's based off what we're doing right now. The information that's given,
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Grace is still on twice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mark, can you mute Grace?
I can mute Grace, yes.
So what I'm saying is, like, the scientific information that it's gathered has to be taken from what's going on right now. Like kids getting up early, yada, 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 what's going on, correct? Does it have a balance where you have kids who are now getting up, going to school in high school at 8:30? So I guess instead of saying, yeah, you have all of these issues, does it have a counterbalance to say what the other one does or doesn't do the same way we're looking at this? Does that make sense?
So are you saying to balance, to talk about what a 7:30 start time offers?
There's research from all across the country of other school districts who have shifted their times.
That's what I'm asking.
Minnesota, you know, they've seen a decrease in car crashes. They've seen an increase in social emotional health. They've seen an increase in test scores.
And it particularly has an,
shortfall.
particularly has an increase in test scores among our kids in the opportunity gap. That change in test scores is really, and I will say that, you know, for kids in high school who are concerned about it, if you look at the majority of the private high schools in the area, they start at 8:30, and, you know, and they're able to work. So
Indian Creek starts at 9 just for the brain research.
Yeah, this has been researched for a long time, and it does, and there's also research that shows sort of long-term effects, because this really, adolescence is such a critical time for brain development, and the lack of sleep at that time has real import. And so I mean, change is hard. It's always hard. People get used to certain things. And it's our job to work through all the other pieces of the puzzle as well. But I'm of the opinion that, you know, the ability to schedule sports or other extracurriculars should not be the tail that wags a decision about, you know, what's actually going to allow our students to thrive in the school setting.
So when you say they're weighing that, are they going to weigh how much homework they give us? Are they going to then decrease how much homework we're given? Because the amount of homework we receive now is a huge chunk the higher you go up. So if you're going to, I feel, in my opinion, if you're going to start later, you need to decrease the amount of homework, because it gives you less time to do homework, especially if you're someone who does sports and extracurriculars outside of school.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that is part of the issue, right? But it's also that kids are now staying up so late to get their homework done, and they're having to get up earlier. at some point, we have to recognize that sleep has to happen. And, you know, how there are, I think, a number of issues before the staff with regard to reconsidering homework, because it's been a huge issue in the virtual environment, because the virtual environment has pushed us, as we know, to the recognition that students simply can't sit in front of a screen for an hour, and you can't have classes of the same length. And so I think students have felt really burdened by homework this year because teachers are trying to make up for the fact that they don't have as much instruction time. But what virtual has taught us is less is more. I mean, if you read the research on virtual learning, that's what that says. And I think that, now I should say, just to be clear, the Board of Education cannot and should not get into the business of dictating things as specific as homework length and curriculum. Our job is policy, and our job is to adhere to the mission and the vision and the goals of AACPS. So our job is to make sure the policy goals are clear, the policy is good policy, and ensure that the implementation of that policy is being done the way it should be done. So homework is part of that implementation. And my own view is that one of the things that should come out of this pandemic experience is a lot of changes that are things we've known for a long time need work, but the move to virtual has forced us to confront some of these issues. And I think there has been for a long time a question about the sheer volume of homework, and is that ultimately valuable? You know, there's kind of a point of diminishing returns. And so, Kayla, I think what you're bringing up is a really important point, but I think it's a sort of broad underlying point that needs to be addressed regardless of the particular school start times. And my own daughter's a freshman in college. I've taught college students. My other young people I know have gone to college, and a couple of things happen to them. A, they get to sleep a whole lot later in college. B, they feel a lot less what they call busy work in college. And so there's a question of, you know, to what extent all the homework is necessary. And these are big questions that are going to have to be addressed, but I think will be a part of this discussion and should be a part of the discussion. So I hope that's helpful.
Odessa, you had your hand up earlier. You've been waiting patiently.
Yes, Dr. Tobin. Way back when I went to high school, the hours were 9 to 3, and we still had all of that. So I think I'm happy to hear that the time is being moved up. But my question is about the hybrid plan that's going to be used. Can you explain that plan to us, please?
Well, so we will be hearing more about it next week. That's what Dr. Arlotto is tasked with, has to do, because obviously everything is constantly changing. We've just heard, for example, the county executive has changed some of the restrictions. Cases are moving. Fortunately, they've been moving down over the past couple of weeks. Obviously, we don't know how that's going to go moving forward. But right now, as much as we have, and there is a page on reopening at AACPS, the facts, the FAQ page is actually pretty good because they constantly update it with questions that parents and staff are sending in and that they've responded to. So first of all, I would urge you to look at that. As it now stands, based on what has been shown to us thus far, and in previous open meetings, so none of this is has been anything other than public, is that you're looking at 2 days a week for a cohort to be in. So one cohort would be in Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday would be the day that the buildings are completely cleaned. Thursday, Friday, a second cohort would be in. The students who are in would have a teacher in front of them, but the teacher would also be teaching students who are virtual.
And it wouldn't necessarily be a teacher. According to Dr. McMahon, it would be an adult in the room.
Yes.
It might be you, Odessa, or someone else.
Well,
The adult in the room when the teacher is home or otherwise.
So I think this is an important point because people often raise the fact that private schools have been in hybrid. Many kids go to school in hybrid in a private school, and what they have teaching them is a teacher on a machine because the teacher, for whatever the reason, health concerns or whatever, can't be in. And that we just don't know. I mean, that's why the information has been gathered by the school staff to determine A, how many students are interested in coming back, and B, how the faculty can come back. Because again, teachers will be asking for accommodations. We don't know, all of that. Obviously, we're also up against what, pretty much every state in the union's up against, which is questions about how the vaccine distribution is going to go. And that too will determine who's in, I would imagine. So, all of these are big fat question marks right now. We have sort of a broad idea of what it would look like. And it would also, obviously, all of this varies depending on what level you're talking about, whether you're talking about pre-K, early elementary, later elementary, middle school, high school. In some sense, elementary is the easiest because kids stay basically put with a teacher, certainly the early elementary. Whereas you get into middle school, you get into high school, and students are moving around. And that's a huge logistical question mark as to how that goes. Again, the experience of a lot of kids in private schools is, in high school when they're marching, when they have to go from room to room, they are walking single file 6 feet apart through the hallways on one side of the hallway to their next room. So by all accounts, hybrid is not going to be school as usual. It will be in the building and it will be with some of your classmates in person, but again, you'll be separated. It's not hanging out in the halls. It's not hanging out in the media center. It's not any of those typical things. Ms. Ellis, I don't think I can give you anything much more precise than that at this point because so many pieces remain to be seen, and I'm waiting to hear more next week.
So in the past, they had stated that they plan on starting out with elementary and then maybe middle and then high. Is that the stages of it, or will it be? That's what's been talked about initially everywhere, because the research told us that two things. Pediatricians said it was most immediately critical to get the younger children back into school, partially because virtual, it's incredibly difficult for very young children. It's incredibly difficult for most kids to go through it, but particularly for very young children. It's also, as I said, somewhat easier to manage from a health perspective because there's less moving between classes. But there are other concerns, right? There are all the needs that, high school students have for kids who are looking towards applying to college, and they feel they need to be in and have that connection. The senior class this year, who I think feels very strongly, and how can you disagree with this, that they would like some time
in school in some form with their friends. So I think the superintendent is trying to balance all of that in presenting a more final plan. So, you know, the initial plan that was presented in October or November, which would have stretched things out by quite a few weeks, I may be more compressed at this point. The other piece of the puzzle is that Dr. Kalyaraman, our health officer, has indicated that things like metrics may change with the advent of the vaccine. So we're also waiting for that information. Now, as I'm sure you all know, the governor has also weighed in on this, as has his acting health officer. And so that's introduced some other complications into the discussion. Sort of what had been the ground has shifted somewhat. So that's to say we have a lot of moving parts, and I suspect we're going to hear something next week that will be somewhat different than what we heard in October and November with regard to that time frame.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ellis.
Mm-hmm.
Who was next? Janet? Was Janet next?
Jeff, you're muted.
Jeff, you're muted.
Jess and then Janet, please.
Oh, okay.
I just have a quick question just based off of, I'm not sure whether you'd be able to have an answer for this right now, but I heard from some teachers this afternoon that they went to get their vaccines at Maryland Live today through the Maryland Health Department. And when they got there, which they had appointments for, and when they got there, their appointments were canceled because the people giving the vaccine said that Dr. Arlotto had informed the Maryland Health Department that he had his own plans and they were not to be getting vaccines. So these were people who were in line, had appointments, and then got there and had them canceled. Do you have any information on that, or what is the plan to vaccinate our teachers?
Yeah. So I was not aware that there was, that because we had a plan at AACPS, teachers couldn't go elsewhere. So that's news to me, but there is a plan. We have set up Dr. Arlotto and the health department have set up a specific place, Severna Park High School, for the vaccination of teachers, and the vaccinators will be from the fire department. So the fire chief and Dr. Arlotto have worked this out. And my understanding is as soon as they've got the vaccines, they are literally ready to go from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. To do nothing but vaccinate the teachers. And as they get doses, so for example, if they get 1,000 doses, everybody on the staff and teachers at ACPS filled out a response about whether they wanted to be vaccinated, all sorts of things, and their particular, obviously where they're teaching, what they're teaching, any other considerations. And so there's a sort of order of priority based on a lot of pieces of information. And so as soon as they know they have the doses, those emails go out. Now, I believe the actual appointment is made through the county health department, because the county health department has to track the information, which vaccine they get, the batch, the date of the first shot, all of those things have to go through. That can't be kept in AACPS, that has to be kept in the health department. So the short answer is there's a plan. And that's kind of where we are right now. So.
Janet.
Okay. So I was one of the PTA high school leaders on a call with Dr. McMahon last night. She gathered a bunch of us and answered questions about the reopening for high school and about schedules. And so her envisioning of the scenario was one quite rapid and quite rosy, that it was fine, and we were going to be having the children go through, a unidirectional way in the hallway, and so somehow it was all going to work. the number of parent representatives asked a lot of questions. We haven't gotten some answers back on that yet. Just about how, as anybody who's been inside Annapolis High School knows, the dark corners of rooms with no ventilation, no window, small. And it seems like the school system is still operating on a contact surface model of infection that has, been the previous thought, which is now completely veered much more into the airborne transmission issues. And so they're possibly protecting against something that is not the focus that they should be on, and it's ventilation instead. But Dr. McMahon was saying that, high school might be moving along very quickly after the opening of elementary. So if they are on track to open elementary March 1st, high school might be the following week. And with the priority of Cat South, Cat North, and ESOL students, but then getting the rest of the students into the building. So if Annapolis High, if say 50% of the students said they wanted to come back, maybe that's 1,000 students, and you have a 500 cohort on Monday, Tuesday, and 500 on Thursday, Friday. With masked teachers, and it sounded so regimentedly awful. I can't imagine being a student wanting to do that, to sit there on the Chromebook, separated in a very regimented, you are not, going off to have lunch. Lunch is delivered to where you sit and you do not move much. You get up in an orderly thing to be transported to the next place where you sit. And so I asked a question about the number of non-respondents, because in the previous survey, our elementary school data had, we had schools with 40+% non-responding. And
right.
As a senior parent and PTA president, chose not to respond because I did not have enough information on what high school would look like to make that informed choice. And so how are parents going to be able to choose a different response once we finally know what the full information is of how the school day will look? How do we get to choose? Do we contact our school? And
yeah, I mean, I suspect, again, I'm waiting to hear more of this myself, but I suspect that it's going to involve talking directly to your school, your head, your principal, et cetera.
Yeah.
To your point, and this is anecdote, but I know several young people whose families send them to a private high school, and they are now asking to return to virtual because they find it so sad.
Yeah.
Be in school the way they're in school. And this is really unfortunate because our students have lost, so much in so many ways, socially and all sorts of things. But the reality is much of what you've just mentioned, right?
Right. And they did, Dr. McMahon did talk about possibly students being shuttled off to a new teacher in the middle of, second semester of their.
It's not impossible, simply because, the difficulty of knowing who's coming back, who isn't.
Right. And the idea that you may not, so you would have an adult body in the room. So maybe your teacher is at home virtually teaching you, and you are sitting there on the desk looking at the Chromebook.
Right.
You would have some adult from the building, in the room with you.
Yeah.
To speak from a student's perspective and speaking to kids in my class and lower classes, as uncomfortable and how strange it may seem to be sitting in that situation, especially as juniors, we are willing to do that because not only have we lost motivation from sitting at a computer screen in our homes, because we literally spend our whole lives in our home, it is more beneficial for us. And a lot of us, as studies have shown, struggle with online school. And me personally, I've always been a person who's good at math. I personally now am struggling with math because I just don't think it's a class that can be taught online. And many of my teachers have been like, they're willing to go back because they know how beneficial in-person teaching is. And a lot of my classmates have just said that they rather sit 6 feet apart and be uncomfortable than to not understand what's happening and being confused in class. And I understand teachers oftentimes want students to unmic, but the real reason is oftentimes we don't unmic is because we don't know what's happening. We are so confused, we are unmotivated that we just do the homework and submit it and just hope we get a good grade. So I personally signed up for hybrid just because I know how important my junior year is.
Right.
And it's personally been a struggle for me. I already knew it was going to be hard, but it's even harder than it is. And then the program that I'm in, we have to write so many essays that there is not enough time to be built in for the teacher to, one, teach the class, and then to help us write our IAs, EEs. It's just so much work that they are just unable to, which is going to affect us in our senior year when it comes to trying to submit these assignments to get our diplomas. And then students are going to be complaining because we don't know how they want us to have these high expectations for us when we are struggling so much. So I think, yes, some private school kids have said, oh, I don't like it, but we are at a place that we have been online so long that we feel deprived, not only of the high school experience, but of education itself. It's just not the same. You're sitting there and you're like, no one gets out of bed, no one changes out of their clothes, you sit in your pajamas and then you shut off. So I think, as uncomfortable as it may be, it's going to help us. And you have some students who aren't going in for actual school, but feel the need, since Cat South is something that their profession is. ACPS is offering you just to go to Cat South, but do online school. And that's what some kids are doing, because how are you supposed to become a mechanic online? That's just something that you need that one-on-one hands-on experience. So
I appreciate hearing that. And it is so variable depending on your grade, depending on your perspective. And so hopefully they can make it as good as possible, but it's really going to need to hammer out a lot of the details, like how are you going to make it safe with all the cords in the buildings, and worrying about, like, yes, and they talked about the math classes, and if kids were struggling in math, they might switch them to a different teacher and stuff like that. So there's just a lot of details to hammer out to make it the best possible experience for as many kids as possible.
Yes, you've got the last question for Dr. Tobin, and then we do need to move on with the agenda.
Thanks. I just wondered if you had any updates on testing. I know that not much has been discussed when we talk about going back to hybrid about the testing, but for students who are going back if right now MSDE is still requiring testing, and for students who are going back to hybrid, that's going to be a large portion of their time in the classroom is going to be testing. So has the board talked about that at all, and what sort of role does the board have in that? And
that has not actually been a big part of our discussion thus far, because we've been working so hard to try to understand like the mechanics of what has to happen. Essentially, the board's role in that is making sure that we abide by what MSDE says, or advocate for, what we need to advocate for. So again, we're going to hear more, I think, from Dr. Arlotto, because I do know, the superintendents statewide meet and have done since this pandemic began every Friday. And so they are the ones that do a lot of the back and forth with MSDE on sort of, how do we meet these requirements given the circumstance that we're in. So no, I don't know where we are with that right now. There's obviously been a lot of discussion about iReady and all the other little things that, not little, but the other sort of assessment stuff they're doing along the way. But where we are with the state assessments right now, I don't know.
I just think that's something we need to, especially in this cluster with the large number of children who have chosen to go not to go back. The kids are in the, in the opportunity gap. If they're not getting the testing and everybody who goes hybrid is, how is that going to affect? And if people are going back hybrid to get the FaceTime, but really they're going to go back hybrid to spend most of their time testing, I don't know how valuable that is.
Right.
Just something that if you could let us know, and if I think we as a commission need to keep an eye on it, because I think it really affects our
No,
costs.
thank you. That's a good point, and I will try to pursue it.
Well, Joanna, thank you again for carving out some time in your busy schedule to come join us. Please, if your schedule allows, feel free to stay as long as you want. And
Thank you.
you always have a standing invitation from us to start off our meeting for Q&A and discussion period. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is point number 5, committee reports. As our commissioners know, last fall we created some subcommittees to work on special ideas, and we have divvied them up into 6 different groups. The first one that we'd like to get an update to see if anything has transpired since we last met is that group that was working on charter schools and/or target program. That's Ken Starks, Sheila Finlayson, and Odessa Ellis. Anything to report since we last met?
Well, with all what's going on with the virtual education and Christmas and the holidays and everything, I haven't done anything. I did reach out to Ms. Finlayson in AOL email, so I may have to try another email. But, at one point we had the Thornton Commission, right? So now it's the Kerwin Commission that's supposed to be addressing these type of inequities. So I just think that right now, with the budget and with the money and the with everything that's going on in the state of Maryland, charter schools is probably will be at the bottom. But I think we still should pursue it. But right now, it's just not. It's not up there right now. We're trying to get this pandemic under control, and I haven't heard anything. I know the Kerwin Commission. I haven't heard anything. I think it passed in the state house, but there's no money, as far as I know. And
I
so
believe the Kerwin Commission was vetoed by the governor. Is that correct? The Kerwin Commission
last year.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, Sheila, I emailed you at the AOL. Did you see the email?
I'm afraid I did not. My AOL email gets swallowed up with spam, so I'm sorry I didn't get it. But feel free, you have my number. But may I, Odessa, we have not met, but I am working in the very early stages with a group to create a academy, a training academy, a skills-based academy in Annapolis. And so you'll hear a lot more about that, but we have not, Odessa and I have not had an opportunity to really talk about a charter school. I do believe that under Speaker Jones, there is going to be an effort to bring back at least portions of the Kerwin report for funding. So let's hope that gets further this year. Last year it got passed, but the governor vetoed it. But I think it has not gone away.
Okay.
And point of personal privilege, I'd like to welcome Joanna. I'm sorry I wasn't here when the meeting began. I had 2 other meetings prior to this one, so I apologize to everyone for being late, but hi. So anyway, Jeff, no, we have not done anything with that subcommittee.
Okay, thanks for the update. The next group, Group B here, is the low performance and proficiency level at promotions. That's Enid and Jess and myself. Since we last met, I exchanged some emails with Carlisa Finney. Some of you may remember Carlisa. Carlisa was the former executive director within AHCPS of the Office of Equity and Human Relations. And I reached out to her to see what data we could get about when the last time was that the school system met, as they used to do on a regular basis, I believe quarterly, to discuss minority performance especially, but the different ethnic subgroups performance in the Annapolis cluster. And that was tied in, I believe, with the U.S. Office of Civil Rights negotiated settlement with Anne Arundel County Public School System. And according to Carlisa, it was interesting. She said that in 2014, the school system underwent a major reformation, rethinking of its Office of Diversity and Inclusion Issues. And it was then in 2014 that the school system stopped having these quarterly meetings. Joanna, that may be a data point to keep in the back of your mind. You know, the issue of challenged student performance as a subgroup and their continual performance gap has been something that is always at the very forefront of our issues. And we're wondering out loud if we could reconvene these meetings, whether they be annually, semi-annually, or quarterly, to look at what the data is saying. And if in fact it has been 6 years, it's long overdue, in my opinion, to reconvene some of those sessions to look at the data.
I think that's a point well taken. Let me just add, there has just been formed a board equity committee, which is being chaired by our student member. And the other two members are Ms. Antwine and me. Now, we haven't yet had our first meeting. It literally was just formed. And it was formed to some extent along with the process of the joint initiative to close the opportunity gap. So I think certainly what you raised, Jeff, is something we will take up there. But the reason, my understanding is the reason for forming this committee is to really put this at the board level and make sure that this is a key part of all of our policy making, all of our thinking moving forward. And you may be aware, we had the presentation, sorry to take a minute here, a presentation from the joint initiative. And one of their 4 key recommendations was to view every policy, every regulation through an equity lens, kind of like in legislation, having a fiscal note, basically having an equity note, if you will. It's akin to what President Biden was talking about with regard to the federal government, to make sure that is a consistent priority across everything that we do. So, so whether or not it results in the same quarterly meeting, I'm not sure, but I think certainly the goal is to follow this issue in exactly the way that those meetings were intended to do. So.
Thanks very much, Joanna. And you may have sat in on some of the meetings earlier last year when it became pretty clear that the numbers in proficiency level in math and in English for our minority students were hovering throughout the cluster in the teens and 20s. But then all of a sudden, when it comes to high school graduation rates, they shoot up into the 80%. And so there's a disconnect there that suggests that we're sending people out into the real world without proficiency to continue on with their studies or without the skills to thrive. And we're interested in trying to figure out where that delta is. Let me see, Enid or Jess, do you have anything to add from this subcommittee?
No, that sounds good. No.
Okay.
I would like to hear more. If you could, I'd love to, be included on those conversations so that we can all work together as a committee if that's something we're going to do.
Sure. Thanks, Jess. Okay. Next, see career pipeline and vocational preparation. That's Enid, Ken, Sheila, Odessa, Laura, and Janet. Anything to add other than what we previously mentioned?
I just would add that I still encourage people to join the Annapolis High PTSA Facebook page, because our change engineering teacher Becky Burhogan posts a ton of things on that page for job opportunities, career awareness, courses in change engineering and the signature program we have, and explaining those. And so she's been prolific, and I would encourage people to then share those posts out into the community. I try and share them onto the Eastport Neighborhood Forum page and other things, so that Adetola will forward those and share them out to people also. But if more of us could do that, that would be very helpful to just reach as many parts of our community as we could.
Also, I reached out to Ms. Jackson, guidance counselor at Annapolis High School.
Mhm.
We started talking before the holidays, and the holidays came. We started talking back about a week ago, and we're trying to figure out what kind of industry, HVAC industry people can we reach out to come in and want to do some training. So we're reaching out to workforce development and see how they can participate, because they used to come to the school several years ago and offer some skill training. So we're trying to see how that looks and go from there. So I guess
Ken,
we're all trying to work and do something.
has anybody reached out to the United Association, which is located right here in Annapolis? They are the organization that oversees all the pipe fitters and steam fitters across all of North America. So all the HVAC, heating, refrigeration. And there is, I know, a local that has posted, I think we posted in the PTSA group, has posted when they've had some recruiting information, but that would be in one of the organizations. One of the reasons I volunteered for this committee was that I wanted to get us in contact with them. We've got the headquarters right here. There is absolutely no reason that we are not hooking up our graduates with their training programs. They're phenomenal. And they our students with 4 years of mathematics that is required for the high school diploma should definitely be qualified to get into these programs.
What's the name of the place? I'm sorry.
United Association. They're located right on not Church Circle, the Spa on West Street on the Circle there. Behind them is at the Westin Hotel. That's their national office, and they're the organization that oversees all of North America with regard to the steam fitters and pipe fitters.
Okay, United Workers.
United Association. Yeah, well, we can talk offline about it, because I would like to, one of the things I wanted to do is to hook our group up with them and with the high school to make sure that we are getting as many of our students into their programs as possible. They're great apprenticeship programs because it's a job as well as training. So when they go to work, they're already earning. It gives them a wage right away, as well as the training to continue as their training increases, to increase wages, so that they're in a solid career that can feed a family by the time they're out of school.
So do they have a partnership with the high school? Is there a partnership some kind of way?
No, that's what I'd like to build, though.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Joanna?
Let me just add to this. The Kirwan Commission blueprint for Maryland came up earlier. I think the Senate, the General Assembly thinks it's pretty likely they are going to overturn the veto. And the reason I bring that up is that a key portion of that is vocational training, and the idea that students would graduate from high school not just with some classes, but with an actual certification by the time they're done with high school, so that they can immediately begin working. So any of you who wish to reach out to your legislators and indicate your support for that, I think it's worth it, because this is something very critical that's a part of that legislation. So.
Thanks, Joanna. Next, bilingual facilitators and support for English language learner families. And Jess Packler. Jess, anything to report?
Not anything to report, other than I testified on the need for bilingual facilitators and just increased focus on bilingual and translators across our school system in the budget hearing earlier this month. And also on the need to have bilingual front office staff, whether it is hiring staff that's bilingual or offering training so that there is at least some bilingual, so that when somebody calls the office or goes into an office at any school in the system. And I particularly, I made the request that based on conversations with a number of people in different schools and different facilitators and translators, that any school which has a higher than 25% of the population is English language learners, including the families, right? Because sometimes the students aren't English language learners anymore, but the families are. But if the 25% or more of the families that they have at least one full-time person, because that's not where we are at this point. And so that's all that I have to.
All right, thank you, Jess. And then the last subcommittee is school start times. Jess and Laura Booth and Janet. Quite a big decision came down at the school board level within the past couple of weeks. Laura, do you want to take that, or Janet?
I just want to say, did we skip transportation completely?
Oh, I'm sorry, my mistake. Transportation concerns and then school start times. Go ahead.
All right, so for transportation, I sent out a survey to everyone that was based off the survey that was done 2 years ago about safety concerns in the Annapolis area. And in that survey, I hope you all have had a chance to look at it now, because I'd like to start sending it out just to get an idea of what everyone's different transportation concerns are. But basically because I think, we really need actual facts on all levels. So, it's basically that the cluster has a high number of walkers, students who reside in the non-transported zone throughout our area, and that's particularly for elementary and middle. And then as well as many bus riders, the high school is almost, I think it's like 98% bus riders. And to make sure that we can understand and we can help the city and the county be aware of any concerns from a safety standpoint, asking if everyone can comment to inform us of dangerous streets, intersections, missing sidewalks, places where a crossing guard is needed, bus stop concerns, et cetera, within all neighborhoods in the cluster, so that we can compile a list for the appropriate agencies. And then once we get that information, we'll compile that list and follow up with the appropriate agencies. So if anyone has any comments on the survey, please let me know.
Jess, anything else broadly related to transportation issues?
I also testified in that same hearing about the need for more focus on transportation and particularly for a look at the bus rider radius, particularly for our urban schools.
All right.
And Joanna and I. Oops, so Joanna and I testified today. We testified last week at the House and this week at the Senate with regard to the school bus safety and the school bus overcrowding issues that we've had, to basically say that rewrite the law so that students cannot stand in the aisles while a school bus is moving during normal conditions. They did want to leave an exception in there for in case of emergency, if you had to evacuate a school or some reason, you want to get kids out of there as quickly as possible. But during normal everyday conditions, there must be the capacity must follow whatever the manufacturer says the capacity is. I know we've talked about here in Annapolis that especially at the elementary school level, they often calculate capacity based on 3 students to a seat, which is somewhat unrealistic if you look at the size of some 5th graders and their backpacks and lunch boxes and musical instruments and who knows what. So to have realistic bus capacity numbers that we're using, and to make sure that our buses aren't being continuously or consistently run over capacity has been an ongoing problem, as people have come to our meetings in the past to say.
All right. So we've talked earlier today about the school start times vote from the school board. Anything to add here, Laura or Janet? You've got your hand up.
Yeah, there's a number of things to add. So in some of the budget presentations from the county executive, and Chris Trumbauer has run by the board and during the town hall budget meetings and stuff, he's made fairly clear that there is a number of one-time funds, not for recurring expenses necessarily, but the way that the county has budgeted themselves they do have a bit of a cushion this year. It's not as dire as was originally anticipated. And so I think from an advocacy standpoint, we should be pressing the school board and the county council both to be adopting like a one-time contracting out consultation with the Prismatic transportation evaluation firm in order to actually implement the start time changes that the board has designated by policy. Dr. Arlotto in the meeting indicated his skepticism and unwillingness to make that change. And so if he is not, and kind of referred to old numbers of $8 million that were never justified anywhere in the past. So I think we who've focused on transportation for so long should send in some advocacy testimony that the board achieved this through these one-time monies that the county is saying is available this year by contract.
All right, anything else on the transportation issues, start times, those related issues? Enid, do you have your hand up?
Yes, this isn't in particular, this is a little bit of housekeeping. And again, I want to add that we need to add Pam to the bilingual facilitators committee and to the transportation concerns committee, and Grace and Kayla, if you guys could maybe pick two of the committees. We've asked every member to pick two of the committees for you to join.
Okay, could you forward that to Enid via email, and we'll get you added to the list of the subcommittees, to Pam and to Grace and to Kayla. Okay, anything else on transportation? All right, next on the order of business of old business is Education Commission staffing and elections. When we closed during the December meeting, Ms. Hillary Raftovich from the mayor's office said that we really needed to have some new elections for the chair position coming up in the new year. In keeping with that and some other staffing issues, Alderperson Finlayson, myself, and Vice Chair Enid Collison-Lee had a telephone meeting with Hillary Raftovich, and we generated this plan moving forward. We have had a consistent problem with staffing and filling the Ward 6 Education Commissioner that has been vacant since the end of 2016. And so Alderman Finlayson has volunteered to put forward an amendment to change to the city code that would affect the Education Commission in this way, that if there is a vacancy that is unfilled for some certain period of time to be determined, then the mayor may fill that position with someone else from within the city limits. So Alderwoman Finlayson, would you mind if I pass the mic to you, and if you have anything else to embellish that with, and that would be legislation that would come this spring.
Jeff, I think you've covered it. I haven't heard back from the law department, but we're looking at what the time limit would be, you know, whether the vacancy has existed for a year or, 2 years or whatever. So that's still in discussion. So it's still in the law department, but I think you covered everything else.
Okay, so Laura, go ahead.
Well, I was just curious how that works. So if there's nobody from a particular ward, so then the mayor appoints somebody who doesn't live in that ward. If somebody from that ward then comes along later on and says, yes, I'd like to represent the ward, does that mean that you would continue to have somebody who's not from that ward representing that ward?
No, well, yes, until the vacancy occurs again. So if it's filled with a non-ward specific person, then that person would fulfill the term, and the other person could then step up when there's a vacancy.
Well, how long? I mean, do we have term limits? I mean, how often would those is it like that they would stay for a year, and at the end of that, how long is that term? I just am concerned that we could end up with a situation where we have all the wards in theory, if that were to go forward, all the wards could be represented by somebody who doesn't live in that ward, which sort of defeats the purpose of having us as representatives of a ward.
Well, you're absolutely correct. That could happen. But we also have a problem we're trying to address.
Right.
We've had a ward without representation for some time. And the alderman from the ward has said that he's got people that's willing to represent his ward, even if they don't live there. So,
Is that for Ward 5 or Ward 6? Has Alderman Chandler-Meyer been consulted as to new?
Well, actually, I'm referring to the alderman from Ward 6, not from Ward 5.
Okay. I'd like to see if we can get our new alderman from Ward 5 to nominate some people pretty quick.
Janet,
It's been a long time that's been vacant.
Janet, Ms. Raftovich suggested that Ms. India Oaks has put in an application for the Ward 5 position that hasn't.
Okay, let's get her on.
And it hasn't been rooted forward. But if in fact that's the case, that would bring experience and enthusiasm to the.
Yes.
So
can we fast track these processes that seem to have beguiled us for an overly long period of time?
Well, the process is that the nominee has to go before the respective committee. And so Ms. Oaks would have to go before the Housing and Community Development Committee. They meet once a month. And it has to go on their agenda. So, it depends on what their agenda looks like for any given month, whether they can add something else to it or not. But it has to go to the committee and then it goes to the council.
Okay, but if we could put the will of this commission to fill these seats that have long stagnated, I think we should try our best to do so, to encourage the city to move quickly with those.
I just want to agree with that, because we had somebody that applied from Ward 6, and after 2 years of no movement from the city, she rescinded her application. So, this isn't necessarily a problem with a lack of applicants. It's a problem of administration within the city. And she worked, she was great. She lived right in Ward 6. And then eventually had a baby and moved on. It was no longer something, but that was, it was 2 years that she had applied and put in her and kept going in and asking for more information. So, I think that we need to make sure that we're not fixing a problem that isn't there by creating code. And if we are going to look at code, then I would like to recommend that we look at the changes to code that were recommended by the Leisure and Learning Transition Team back in the beginning of the Buckley administration, because there were some really good suggestions, I think, that were made by the team and discussed how to maybe make this the commission more functional and more and just change some things. So I think if we're going to make any changes to the code, it really should be something that we look at a bunch of different things, but also make sure that we're not fixing a problem that isn't really there. If the problem is, the same thing happened, I'm pretty sure, with the Ward 5 with Olga. It took forever to get through the process, and by the time she finally got put on the commission, she was no longer interested in being on the commission. So,
and I know that John Polinsky had applied to the positions and never heard back and stuff like that a while back. So there is a problem with getting back to applicants and moving them through the evaluation process.
I'm sure you're aware that it's the prerogative of the mayor. He brings the name forward to the respective committees.
Okay. Well,
thank you, Jeff.
Tina, you have your hand up.
I was just going to say, yes, I agree that there have been definitely some problems, like Grace Matthews, for example, who has filled out several applications. And Jeff and I have tried to stay on top of it, and we get emails and we say, okay, this is going to be done. And then it's such a long time. So yes, I do agree that I know, Sheila, that it is up to the mayor and all that, but there's definitely some kind of disconnect somewhere.
I couldn't agree more. And what can I say?
And Pam and Grace, your names came up in that discussion, and you are to receive some correspondence from the mayor's office regarding your position on the commission. So if that hasn't come yet, please expect it. And if it doesn't come within the next week or so, please reach back out to me and we'll reconnect and make sure that happens. Okay, is there, so with that in mind, awaiting the code here, it was recommended that we delay the election for a new chair until the end of the school year to allow this legislation to play itself out. Any discussion on that or anything else related to manpower issues?
Who recommended that we delay the chair?
It was not from me, Jess, let's say that. But it's
highly recommended.
I recommend it also.
Just to keep some stability until changes are made.
Any other comments? All right. Is there any other old business from the floor?
Jeff?
Janet?
I have the old business that has never been resolved of the grade schools rating and the data that AACPS is using to continue to give Annapolis High a score of 4 out of 10. I brought that up for years and it has not been addressed. So I'd like this committee to actually take some action on that data request, that they update data and reevaluate providing the most current data to the grade schools organization, because those grade schools ratings, if anyone has been on Facebook groups of local parents and realtor people, it's on the bottom of every single real estate listing, what your grade school rating is for Annapolis High, which we don't think reflects the quality of education at the school, that data from 2014, 2016, not reflecting our current situation.
Well, Janet, what do you recommend? This has been brought up from the commission up to the school system.
We've talked to them. I don't think it's been brought up to the school system, and I know that's my.
I remember Mr. Mosier being in a conversation with this.
But Mr. Mosier is not necessarily the decision maker, so us raising issues to Mr. Mosier doesn't mean that they have been brought to the school personnel that needs to address it with the will of the committee here, with the will of the commission. I think instead of just talking about certain issues among ourselves, we really need to take discernible actions to get things done. So I see a need to take action to get things done here.
Janet, if I remember correctly, when Bob was at the meeting, he was supposed to take that information to that particular person. So one of my suggestions would be, Jeff, maybe if we could just email him and say, we're still concerned about our ratings of our high school. Can you please forward our concerns to the person in charge? And then I think we also said something about parents and teachers to send in information, and I don't think that was done either.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the proper pathway for parental concerns and the concerns of this commission to get to the school system is through our board rep. Dr. Tobin, are you still monitoring?
Probably off.
Yeah, she may have stepped out. Janet, I might recommend that put together.
She's unmuted.
I'm here. Sorry, I stepped away a second.
Yeah, no, understood. So Janet has brought up a point that it's come up several times over the past couple of years, and that's that when the great search engines that feed greatschools.org and some of the online databases, when they suck up the information for Anne Arundel County, they're sucking up old data that oftentimes is not reflective of current school performance. And you know, the hope has been that the school system could reach out and influence, you know,
Provide the updated data.
databases and ensure that current information is reflected there. Is that something that that you can bring to the attention of the appropriate people?
Yeah, let me probably, I would imagine Mr. Mosier is the first person to talk to, but specifically him and a couple of other people, and see if I can get some sense of how we direct that to make sure that the most updated information is going out. So I'll put that online.
Dr. Tobin, also the one of the things that's dragging Annapolis High's score down so greatly is the achievement gap between our students, and that's what's giving us a very low score. So inaction and non-funding by the board or by the county for closing the achievement gap is perversely punishing us by driving away more students from Annapolis High who only see the grades.
It's called opportunity gap now, Dan.
I know, but in the rating system of the state Maryland
okay.
education, they call it an achievement gap of ratings. So
just to be precise, they're two different things. The opportunity gap is the cause. The achievement gap is the effect, right? And the reason that Joint Initiative changed it was they said, why are we talking about the effect and not talking about the cause, which is the opportunity? Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
But yes, your point's well taken.
Yeah.
I didn't know why they had.
Yeah.
I was also wondering how MSDE and the rating agencies, so we're also independently evaluated by MSDE in their scoring system. And one of the big things that drags us down is a number of absences, chronic absenteeism. So do you have any sense of how they're going to handle a year like this year? People are not sending in notes when they're...
That I don't know, right? I mean, that remains to be seen. I will say this. I wrote something last year about the report card structure. And the truth is that, and actually, Jess and I have talked about this. When you're not comparing demographics, you're not disaggregating the information, and you're not comparing schools that have similar demographics, you're really talking apples to oranges, because we know that, for example, poverty is a huge driver of a lot of the issues that are most pressing, for example, along with other things.
But we're still thrown into the same rating system where Annapolis High 2 stars and Severna Park High School gets 5 stars.
Right, exactly. So that there's no way to look at that the way it's presented, to look at that information and have any sense of the relative makeup of each school, and then the relationship between those things, and things like truancy and so forth. So, there's still, in my view, a whole lot of work to be done on setting up a structure that is actually going to tell you realistically about what's happening at that school. And right now, it doesn't. And it's discouraging to the teachers and the administrators at the schools who are in a situation where they know that the deck is stacked against them, essentially.
Right. So I see step number 1 as getting correct and updated data, and working towards a more fair evaluation as we progress, but we can instantly get them. The school system has that correct and updated information. They can distribute that too.
And on the commission level, I think if we all reach out to the, the PTAs and the schools in our ward and speak to them about how important it is for families to go in and rate their schools, rate schools, and what an important thing it is. Because if you compare the number of ratings at some of our cluster schools versus other schools and other clusters, the parents are much more active in rating their schools, and that rating plays a small part, but it does play a part. So I know that I've reached out at Annapolis Middle and Eastport, and I think that if everybody could, take that on for their ward, those people have ward, for those wards that have a commission, take that on and ask, and reach out to the PTAs and say, hey, you really need to, please go on and rate your schools on Great Schools and the other rating websites. I think that's something that we as commissioners could directly do.
Yeah. Don't load it onto your PTA to do, but load it onto your constituents within your ward to do.
Right. Sorry. But I mean, to reach out, like to have the PTAs help disseminate the message is what I meant.
Yeah.
If you don't have a direct connection within your PTA, your ward. You're muted, Jeff.
Anything else on this issue?
I hope to not have it on old business again next month.
I love your persistence, Janet. You know that. All right. Is there any other old business? Okay, if there is not, moving on to new business, point letter A here is anti-bias, anti-racism training. Jess and Laura Booth.
Or I'll let you introduce it.
If anybody was watching the December 16th meeting of the Board of Ed, they were discussing the legislative program for this legislative session. And in it, Drake Smith proposed adding the term Black Lives Matter, which sent the board into about a 2.5-hour discussion over whether or not that it should be included. And it was clear as we were watching it that some of the board members really didn't understand what that meant or why it mattered. And it sort of, as we were watching it, we talk so much about the achievement gap. We talk so much about equity, and it became really clear that there is a knowledge gap at our Board of Ed. Joanne and I have talked about this offline. She knows that we are not directing this specifically at her, but that members of our Board of Education need to have the same understanding of the issues that are facing all of our students, not just the students from the neighborhoods, that they come from, but understanding what issues are facing our students. The Anne Arundel County Public Schools has put forth statements, and I think I forwarded some of those to you today. They do have a whole statement on equity, and they have, as a result of that, called for professional development for all members of Anne Arundel, all employees of Anne Arundel County Public Schools, teachers, staff, up to and including Dr. Arlotto, have attended training on anti-bias, anti-racism, diversity, inclusion, those sorts of issues. And it seems like there's a disconnect here because the people that are steering the boat, who are making the decisions on what these policies should be, don't have the benefit of that same training themselves. So there is a petition that we have created that says that basically, and I forwarded you the longer text, but which also included some quotes directly from statements put out by Anne Arundel County Public Schools on equity. But the tagline in there is, we demand that all members of the Board of Education be required to undergo the same professional development training on systemic racism, inclusion, diversity, and unconscious bias that is required for all AACPS staff. This petition has been presented at the county PTA, the Anne Arundel County Council of PTAs, and was endorsed and passed unanimously. The state PTA has also endorsed this. It passed unanimously at Annapolis High School PTA, Annapolis Middle PTA, Eastport Elementary PTA, Brockbridge Elementary, and other organizations have been signing onto this on pretty much a daily basis. So I would like to move that we as an organization sign our organization onto this petition as well.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, do you have a written copy of your motion, Laura, that you can submit to the secretary?
Yes, I forwarded it, I think, earlier when
Okay.
I sent this out earlier, but I can find it again.
And Ms. Griffin, do you have a copy of that? Okay, could you, Brianna, could you read that out for the group, please?
Yeah, I've got to pull it up.
Here.
So,
Would you like me to read it?
Sure, Laura.
if that's okay, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I move that the Annapolis Education Commission officially endorse the petition to require anti-bias, anti-racism training for all members of the Anne Arundel County Public Schools Board of Education.
A question before we act on that. Maybe Joanna can tell me, how do we know they're not getting training?
Obviously, I'm a new member.
Right. So you may not have had the training, but do you know if it's in the future?
I'm not aware that it has been the practice for board members to go through it. So there's nothing I've heard of or anybody has referred to suggest that board members have gone through it previously.
Enid, I reached out to a couple board members to confirm, and there is no required training of this kind. They can volunteer to take it, and 2 board members have taken, I think, a half day of this training, but there is no requirement. And this is specifically saying that the Board of Ed members should be taking the same training that everyone else in the school system has to take, so that everybody is on the same level of understanding and knowledge.
I definitely agree with that, especially since I don't know if everyone's aware of the fact that after an incident, my freshman year of high school, they made it a mandatory new class for even high schoolers to take about basically non-bias and being a better person. So I feel like if not only the teachers have to take this course and the students have to take this course, the people in charge should be held accountable to also take this course, because they're supposed to be providing over all schools, all counties, and being representing us. And if the people who are under them are doing it and not them, it's not a good leader. In my opinion, it's not being a good leader if you're not taking it.
Oh, I haven't had it.
It shouldn't be the job of the student member of the board to try to educate the adults on the board on, on what these issues mean and what they matter to our students.
Enid, you have your hand up there. Do you, nothing more? Any more discussion? Let me repeat for the group what I put out in an email a little bit earlier. I haven't gotten a chance to review the policy of the training program, and I personally don't feel comfortable going forward and passing judgment on a program without getting a chance to review it. So for that reason, I am going to abstain without passing judgment on the merits of it one way or the other. Any other discussion on this before we move to a vote? Sheila.
Jeff, maybe, because I feel the same way you do. I'm not familiar with the program that's being recommended. Maybe we should postpone action on this amendment or this motion until we get to see what program we're endorsing. I am well aware of the situation, and I'm even more aware that the young man who has brought the issue to the forefront is not just a student, but he's an African-American man. And so I think it goes a little deeper than out of the mouth of babes. So I would like to see the actual program before we take an action.
If you
So
look
there's
out
a-
on, I just wanted to point out that it's not a single program that we're talking about. This is ongoing professional development that is constantly being developed by the Office of Equity. And if you haven't had a chance to sit through any of the programs that Dr. Gillens has put together, where she spells out what steps need to be taken, but she stresses that it is not a one and done. This is not a 6-hour training requirement that you have to sit through and then we're done. It is an ongoing iterative process where they are constantly attempting to refine and address issues, specifically with regard to unconscious bias. You know, we're perhaps doing a better job of dealing with direct overt racism, but unconscious bias is a lot harder to become aware of and to slowly kind of undo the things that we sort of take for granted as this is how it's done, and understanding, well, wait a minute, why is it done that way and how can we do things differently? And so if you read through the information that is available on the Anne Arundel County Public Schools website, they go through the different areas in which they have been specifying the professional development, and it is ongoing. It is not set in stone. So I'm not sure that we will ever get a written criteria, a written list of this is it, because it is ongoing, and they are constantly adding to that. So I'm concerned about postponing this for something that we may not be able to actually get.
Well, may I, Jeff? The school system has, and I've been retired for many years, but prior to my retirement and prior to my tenure as president of the Teachers Association, we did ongoing diversity training. And actually then it was a monthly requirement of staff development. So I'm still not sure what you're asking. Are you expecting the board members to participate in weekly, monthly, you know, if it's ongoing? I'm just not clear.
We are not requiring a specific curriculum. We are not saying that. We are saying that whatever Dr. Arlotto has, you know, and we do know teachers that sat in on professional development in which Dr. Arlotto also participated. So if it is something that is suitable for him to sit in on, that is the sort of thing that we would like to see the Board of Education go through as well, so that, again, everyone's on the same page.
And just to be clear, I think it's clearly stated that if it's required of the teachers and the staff, then it should be required of the Board of Ed, right? We're not discussing what program. We're saying that if the staff and teachers are required to take this, then the Board of Ed should also be required to take it. It has nothing to do with the program itself. It has to do with AECPS, and I think Kenny's been trying to talk for a while.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I want to say that you literally took the words out of my mouth. It's not that we're saying, here's a program. We're asking, do you even think they need diversity training? And then they can establish how that looks or whatever that may be, right? But I do believe they do, because as a Black man, when they said, oh, well, you're not including the other lives, the other groups of people. It's gay lives, it's this lives. Do you know the kind of slap in the face that was? Because you have to understand, Black lives doesn't ever mean anything outward. It just means, hello, we're human beings also, right? It's a cry for help. And then to have that cry for help, one is ridiculous. And then to have the response of being like, so I think it was Laura said, it's not the overt racism. It's the little things we just don't know. We have to have that training, and we have to have people at the table to say, hey, this is how I feel when you express that opinion. You need to know that. You need to have those discussions at all levels, because that's the only way I think this thing can ever come to some kind of healing. That's what I believe. And if you're saying that the teachers and staff need it, so does the people who want to actually do policy.
Pam and then Sheila.
Do we know for sure that the board members do not attend any sort of anti-bias, anti-racial training as part of their as part of their positions?
Yes,
on
they
the
are
board?
not required to. We did the research on this, and they are not required to.
Is there anything offered though, should you want to take advantage of it?
Can I'll just
directing that to Dr. Tobin.
Yeah, I'll just step in very quickly. There are a couple of trainings that you can take through MABE, the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. All of that is optional. It's not been presented to me as part of my onboarding or anything else that I would necessarily go through the kind of training that our staff and teachers go through. So that has not been something that's sort of part of the menu, so to speak, as you come on board. And so it's haphazard, I think, whether or not a board member has gone through a particular training.
Kayla.
I hope that helps.
And just to back up what Mr. Stark said, it's not us. We just want it required because I know people who want to graduate early, but because of the class requirement that they have to do to take this community wellness class, it adds another requirement class that you must pass this class to graduate. And it just prolongs them being able to graduate early. So if students are affected in that sense, the board members who are in charge of us and made this class a requirement, they should have to take it as well. Because I know as a student, no matter how you feel politically on elections, I have had teachers who don't show bipartisanship and they're not supposed to express their political beliefs. But yet they do, and it's people in administrative positions, which makes students feel uncomfortable. And it's something that this training is necessary so they don't make students feel uncomfortable and everyone around them feel uncomfortable. Because what we have seen is that this is something that is systemic and that it is something that's just not going to go away, and that the people in these high power positions should have to be held accountable for, and not just the people below them. It should be a unit-wide thing. So this body of people isn't just asking for them to take a specific program. They are asking them as a whole just to take something so they can educate themselves on the full entirety of the issues. Because as Black people, we are not saying that no one else's lives matter. We just want to be acknowledged at the same rate as other people. We just want to be equal. And that's something that in the year 2021, we should not still have to be fighting for after everything we have gone through as a group of people. So that's where I feel as though this training is necessary. If everyone else has to take it around you and you are not being held accountable, and you are the adults in the situation, and you have kids who are younger than you by decades taking this class and it having to be a requirement.
Okay, there is Sheila.
Yes, I am not opposed. So let's be very clear. But we are not talking about a problem that can be solved with a course. We are talking, and Kayla, you just said it, we're talking about systemic racism. Okay, so one course, one program is not going to get to the root of it. Absolutely. So I want to hear what the motion is again, please, and we should have it in front of us. Because if that's as far as you want to go with this, then it's not going to solve the problem.
I think that what they're trying to express.
The problem.
I can't hear.
It's doing nothing. Nothing doesn't solve a problem. So I think it could be a start. This could be a segue. Then someone can say, hey, we could do this and we can add on to this. But if we just simply say, hey, I don't know if this can end all racism, then don't even try, then I don't even understand that logic.
Well, and that's not what I'm suggesting either. And that's why I asked to have it read again, because there should be some option for this is a first step. This is not the end step of what needs to occur.
Well, the petition
So,
has
but I
already been
have-
put out
could
and has
I
already
have-
been endorsed as
Could I have
written.
Joanna read it again, or whomever, Laura? I'm sorry.
I have it up now.
Laura.
I have it up now as distributed by email. So I'm happy to read it.
Okay, Brianna, please read it.
Yep, so Laura sent, I move that the Annapolis Education Commission officially endorse the petition to require anti-bias, anti-racism training for all members of the AACPS Board of Education, and then attached the petition language to that email, which is very long, so I won't read it, but the official language of the motion is that we endorse the petition.
So my question then is that all we can ask for? Is that all we want? Just a course?
We can, I agree with you, Sheila. It's a first step. To me, this is a first step. This is saying that we think that it is important that people who are steering our ship, I mean, I'm just going to say personally, we keep talking every single meeting, we talk about the achievement gap, every single meeting. Do we really believe that we can close the achievement gap if the people who are steering our ship don't really understand what it is or what's caused it? And that's what this training is. It is training that is undertaken by AACPS has already determined that this training is necessary. They have already designed and continue to put pieces in place because they believe that it is necessary. And it is an ongoing process. So my question is, if we are going to talk about the achievement gap, how can we possibly have any faith that the people in charge of our ship are going to be able to reach the destination we want them to if they don't even understand what obstacles are in the way?
Joanna, and then Enid.
So I'm going to say a couple of things, and let me be clear. I am speaking now for myself, obviously not the whole board. I do think that whatever the larger issues, and I think those larger issues have been spoken to very eloquently tonight, it did emerge in that conversation in December that at the very least, we need to get the vocabulary straight. Things like equity versus equality. And I do think my own view is I would welcome being a part of the same PD that the staff and teachers are taking on this score, because for all the reasons that have been stated by others, I think for me, that is consistent with doing my job. But I also think there is tremendous value, and I say this now as an educator, in having people go through the same thing as a sort of ground level beginning, so that we can at least get the vocabulary straight as a beginning. And that's a very basic thing, but that is just something I personally would welcome. And so that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Enid.
Yes. When Sheila was talking about when we started with the equity training, I was the equity trainer and went to several trainings throughout the state so that I could come back and bring that information to my school. And the first thing I realized was that everyone was on a different level. And this is a start. At first I was like, well, what is it really going to prove? I was kind of like Sheila, what is it going to prove? They need more than just, but the ABAR is anti-bias, anti-racism. It could be in all forms. It could be all ongoing. Everybody is on a different level. But as Joanna said, we need to make sure that the terminology is understood. We need to make sure that we know what the goal is and that the people serving on the board know what the goal is. Number 3, like Ken said, it's a beginning. It starts a conversation. It may be that once a person takes that first training, they may want to take more. If Joanna says that there are a couple available, maybe that will make somebody want to learn more about themselves, because that's what it's about. It's like what Kayla said about Black Lives Matter. Some people still don't understand that that doesn't mean that everybody's life doesn't matter. That police, that blue lives matter, red lives. Some people still don't get it. And we need to make sure that message is put out there. So it's a start. So
I think that's really important. It's a start. It's an important start. Put everybody on the same page in the Board of Ed and all the staff and throughout AACPS. And that doesn't in any way prohibit us from asking for more or looking into more and seeing what else can be done. But it's the first step.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded, and there's a discussion. Is Alderwoman Finlayson, did you have a friendly amendment to propose, asking that we delay this for 1 month to give people additional time to research?
I'm going to withdraw my friendly amendment.
Well, I'll submit that friendly amendment request. I personally don't feel comfortable voting on something that I just got the very vaguest of details on this afternoon. I would like to do a little bit of research before we, in the words of the resolution, demand that the school system do something with their Board of Education. Those are very, very strong words. And I would like to request 4 weeks. I mean, this has been a problem 400 years in the making. I would like to have 4 weeks to do a little bit of research into it. So do the sponsors accept the friendly amendment?
With all due respect, Jeff, I mean, this was mailed out. I sent this out last week. There was time for you all to read this thing. It's been posted on the internet. I mean, it's been available. I am frustrated because we're not writing a whole letter to the Board of Ed demanding, we're just asking to sign a petition. We really need to wait 4 weeks to decide whether or not we as a group sign a petition. I mean, that to me seems excessive.
Or the word demand is pretty strong. That's a pretty heavily.
Well, the motion just says that I move that we support, that we sign a petition. The word demand is in the petition, but again, it's a petition. It is not a binding legal document. I mean, it is a petition. So I just feel like waiting 4 weeks to decide whether or not we can sign a petition. I mean, as I said, every other organization that this has been presented to has voted unanimously in favor of it. And I certainly respect anyone's right to abstain from that if you're not comfortable with it, or to vote in opposition. But I would like to see us take a vote on it tonight, because I don't really see that we're going to gain any great insight into this by waiting 4 more weeks.
I agree.
May I add, at the council level, we give one another what we consider councilmanic courtesy. Okay, I withdrew my motion to postpone because I was comfortable, but obviously Jeff, our chair, is not. And so I think we deserve to give him something similar to councilmanic courtesy. Okay,
I am not comfortable waiting.
The issue is not, excuse me, the issue is not going to go away. And you all represent all of your respective wards. We can all still sign the petition independently, but carrying the weight of this full body, I think the fair thing to do is to postpone, to give all of us a chance to learn more and move forward next month.
To me, it sounds.
Could we vote on the postponement and then vote on, whether or not, I mean,
the amendment hasn't been seconded.
We vote on the postponement, and then we do not vote on the motion that's on the floor, the main motion. Now, what I have heard, I don't hear any opposition to the legislation. I heard a request to get more information.
I think the stalling out is opposition. It's silent opposition that led us to be in this position for 400 years. We'll do it next week.
Mr. Starks.
That's been habitual.
Mr. Starks, that's not how we conduct business.
And I'm gonna be honest, that's I'm with whatever, but I want to make a stance publicly that I'm disappointed that we can't even say that our body and our government body, whose bodies are kids, can't take racial diversity training, period. We can't come to terms with
I
that.
would agree. I would like to say that
that's
Mr.
what- I
McCrease
don't
has put a
think
motion
that's
on the
what's
floor.
being
Has anyone
said.
seconded it? Has there been a second of Mr. McCrease's motion?
No,
that's
no,
on the
I
floor?
haven't put a motion on the floor, guys. It was a request
Okay.
for a friendly change to the proposal that's on the floor right now.
If you listen to endless hours of the Board of Ed meeting the other day when there were when they talked about friendly amendments to proposals and the board lawyer weighed in on what is and is not, friendly amendment is actually a misnomer that does not apply in the thing. The maker of the motion can make their own amendment if they wish, but there is no such thing, what the board lawyer said, as a friendly amendment. So that's kind of a, they explained it very well in the hour and a half that it took to go over that painful process.
We're dealing with some of the most contentious issues in society today. That's why it's so contentious here. My request to the people who put forward the proposal was to put this off until next month, when it will come up for a vote, when we can all be better into it than I can be.
Can I ask a question?
Sorry, I'm not comfortable postponing.
Can I ask a question, please? This motion, is this stemming from the December meeting on the Black Lives Matter at the board? Is this what this is all about?
This was what caused this discussion, because a lot of people who were watching said, wait a minute. We were concerned that a lot of the members of the board, one of the members of the board basically said that she didn't like those people. She didn't like the group, and didn't understand the difference between a group of people and the term Black Lives Matter. And that made a lot of us who were watching very uncomfortable, because it revealed that there are people who are in charge of making decisions with regard to our children, and with regard to the achievement gap that we've discussed in great length, that don't really understand the issues that we're dealing with here. And I think it is important. That's why this is we are not personally as a group. I agree. I think we should do more as a group, but that is a whole separate discussion. I do not think it is in our place at all to dictate professional development to the school system. I think that's way out of our lane. Anne Arundel County Public Schools believes that this professional development is necessary, and they developed their curriculum. I do not feel at all comfortable in dictating to them what form that should take, but they have said it is necessary, and they have decided what that should consist of. I just would like to see it consistently applied, for exactly as Joanna said, that it is to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So all we are asking is tonight, I moved that we endorse a petition. I would like to see our organization vote on whether or not we endorse the petition. I'm not really sure what a whole month is going. I mean, I could understand if we were putting forth a very long and complicated bit of legislation or something, that we wanted to see enacted, but we're talking about, again, signing a petition.
I watched that meeting, and it was very painful to watch, especially for the student member, Drake Smith. But I'm not too sure about what the intentions were of the other members that were confused, or I don't know. I felt that they prolonged that pain and the agony and whatnot, but I'm not too sure what was behind all of that. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Enid, you have your hand
I
up?
propose we move along.
Probably the pain was a lack of understanding, which is what we're talking about here. The lack of understanding of what the young man was proposing. Ma'am, may I make a suggestion? I'm so torn right now, but I don't believe, even if we pass this tonight, no training is going to take place in the next couple of weeks, really. I don't know when the petition, Laura, do you know when they plan to present, when these other organizations are going to present? Is that the problem?
Well, yes, because we would like to present it to the board before the next board meeting.
Which is on the
Yes,
eighth, when it-
February 3rd. February
February
3rd.
3rd. Okay.
So I would like us to sign it as an organization. Of course, everyone is also welcome to sign as individuals or not sign if you're not comfortable with it. But I would like us to vote on as an organization.
I'd like to call the question.
Yeah.
Okay, the question's been called. We'll immediately go to a vote as to whether we proceed with further conversation. A vote to call the question means that you voting for further discussion be terminated. A vote against it means that you want to continue conversation and debate. Okay, the question's been called. Those in favor of closing discussion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, that carries. That means we go directly to a vote for the resolution. Madam Secretary Brianna, would you please read the resolution? I'm sorry, Brianna, you're muted.
Ms. Booth moved that the Annapolis Education Commission officially endorse the petition to require anti-bias, anti-racism training for all members of the AACPS Board of Education.
All right, are there any questions on what the vote is for? All right, we'll proceed for roll call vote then. Ward 1, Brianna Griffin.
I vote yes.
Okay, Ward 2, abstain. Ward 3, Enid Collison-Lee.
Yes.
Ward 4, Kayla Golder.
Yes.
Okay, Ward 5 is not represented. Ward 6 is not represented. Ward 7, Laura Booth.
Vote yes.
Ward 8, Jess Packler.
Yes.
At-large A, Odessa Ellis.
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Can I just abstain right now? I'm having some emotions about this.
At-large B, Pam Bukowski.
I also wish to abstain.
Abstain. At-large C, Janet Norman.
Yes.
Okay, at-large D, Ken Starks.
Yes.
And Alderperson Finlayson.
Aye. Yes.
Okay, so the motion carries with 3 abstentions. Brianna, do you have an accurate record? Okay, very well. That concludes that business here. New business A. New business B is budget advocacy. Janet Norman.
So I brought up the issue earlier of the county's cushion of one-time, one-year funding that they have for non-recurring expenses. So I am hoping that more than me, Jess, and Laura can write to the board and write to the county executive and participate in the county town halls. It's very easy to get to your Board of Education now and get your comments published prior to the meeting if you send them in by noon the day before. So if you write to board office at AACPS, it will go to all the board members. So we really need a bigger, larger assemblage of voices and a more diversity of voices to speak up for our cluster within the advocacy. Annapolis High PTSA voted and adopted our priorities, which were pretty much the exact same as our adopted budget priorities last year for an additional social worker for Annapolis High School, where Bates Middle School and Annapolis Middle School each have a social worker. Then twice that caseload pours into Annapolis High for a 4-year period rather than 3. And bilingual facilitators and teacher pay for retention and substitute teacher and teacher's aide pay levels that allow us to staff appropriately. So those are the things I'm happy to send that priority list Annapolis High adopted to the rest of the board commission here for your own advocacy, please.
Any further discussion?
Thank you, Janet, for staying on top of things and for sharing information both through PTSA and everywhere else on all these issues.
Agenda item 7C, new business opportunity gap report. Janet Norman.
I sent around the link to the opportunity gap, and I'm hoping that everybody can take a look at it. The summary was presented to the Board of Ed, and I think this is a vehicle for us to get a lot of the issues that we have been talking about for years to have some traction and going forward with the commission. If you take a look, a lot of the transportation issues, equity issues are brought up here in this report. And if we can tie our issues and get them moving beyond discussion into actual tangible actions, I think that's what we need to be doing. So if everybody can read the report and look at how we can make tangible action move forward and not just be discussed circularly.
Steph, I'm wondering if we can have at our next I was wondering if we can have at our next meeting, maybe a report, a very shortened version of what they gave to the Board of Ed. I mean, we can obviously watch the Board of Ed thing, but I think it would be great to get the school system to speak directly to, to our commission so that we can really understand and ask any questions that we might have on it.
And beyond the report, like how they actually will be implementing. So, okay, we can all read the report, we can read the recommendations. How will you actually be implementing from AACPS standpoint? Who's doing the implementing, and what are they actually going to do? That's my goal, my question to get answered.
Yes, whom are you asking to come speak or give a report?
I would guess, the head of the opportunity report, the group that put it together. I don't know. I guess I'm asking if, since you do most of the communication with the school system, if you can reach out to the school system and ask if they can have, somebody from the committee come.
Joanna.
It's a joint initiative, so it is both the county executive and Dr. Arlotto. The trio is Dr. Pamela Brown, Dr. Gillens, and Jane Purcell, I think. So, those are there are actually 5, but those are the 3 that come to mind. Ms. Jackson, and I forget the last one. But anyway, it is technically a joint initiative, so you might want to.
I'd love to get that.
Yeah.
If they could come and,
you probably might, the schools level, you might just want to reach out to Ms. Jackson and ask her, who would come.
So we have a speaker who's requested time next month from the food banks. So I would prefer to put any invited guests off until the following month in the interest of time. How about if we revisit this next month and we'll make a judgment at that point. Is that okay with you, Jess?
If we can get on their tentative schedule, that would be great, than just giving them 3 weeks notice or something. Reserve their time in advance, if that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, we could just ask for March now. If we don't have a speaker now for March, if we could just request that they come.
All right, I can do that. Anything else related to item 7C, opportunity gap report? Next item then is sponsor an AHS senior, Janet Norman.
At our PTSA meeting, we've been working with the school system, and we've mentioned it before, that the city has some potential interest in helping us make sure our graduating seniors are properly taken care of with cap and gown and graduation signs and senior shirt at a minimum. PTA did this kind of on our own advocacy last year, and we were able to contribute to 150 yard signs for our graduating seniors that were needed, over $3,000. So we hope to get an earlier start and get that organized and moving to make sure our kids who have missed out on so much are not missing out some celebration of their culminating high school experience. We budgeted possible $10,000 need based on $100 for 100 students identified. And we're looking at grant opportunities and city sponsorship and other ways to advertise that need.
We ballparked based on there were 400 and some seniors, and roughly, was it 45% would be
50%.
qualified for qualified for farms. So it came out to about 230 some students who might need assistance. We don't necessarily know if all of them, you know, some of them may have already purchased a senior t-shirt or may have already ordered their cap and gown. So we don't know that all students will need all of the services, but we wanted to make sure that it is at least available to any family that, you know, and it may also be families that didn't qualify for farms last year, but this year, as a result of COVID and financial instability, may require some assistance this year. As a parent of a senior, I can say it is very expensive. Every time I turn around, I'm writing a check for something else. And that adds up, and not all of our families can afford all of that. And since our seniors have lost out on so many other opportunities this year, at the very least, we wanted to make sure that they were celebrated, because we don't know whether we're going to be able to have a graduation. Prom isn't looking real likely right now. So we'd like to do something to make sure that they have at least a little bit of a send-off.
Anything else on this topic? Is there any other new business from the floor? Jess and then Joanna.
Yes, I sent an email about this today. This just came up in this week, so I couldn't add it to the agenda previously. But as you've probably seen, legislation has been introduced in the General Assembly to strip Maryland student school board members of their vote if it is a deciding vote on a motion. So I would like to I firmly believe that the role of our fully voting student member, which I think is the only one in the country that has full voting, though Joanna can correct me how I got that wrong, if I got that wrong. But I would like to put forward a motion that the Annapolis Education Commission affirms their continued support of the full voting rights of the AACPS Board of Ed student member.
Okay, Brianna, do you have a copy of that motion?
Did you send that by email, Jess? I think you did, but.
I did, yes.
Okay, then I do have it. I just have to grab it.
Okay. So while she's looking for the exact verbiage here, the general thrust is that the Annapolis Education Commission support the continued presence of a full voting student member on the school board. Is there a second on that motion? Okay, there's a second. Is there any discussion?
I just want to say that this year's student board member is terrific, but over the years I have been continually impressed by the quality of our student board members, and I think it's important because they do bring, just as Kayla brings a wonderful unique perspective to our organization, and I personally have very much appreciated her input. I think the student member of the board brings that perspective to the members of the Board of Education here in Anne Arundel County that they would not have otherwise. So I do think it is important. He certainly works as hard as I know he's very good about reading and responding to emails. He works just as hard as they do. So it seems very unfair that his vote should be counted less or not counted when he puts in the same amount of work as they do. And I do agree that we should protect his voting right.
Enid.
Yes, does anybody have any more information about this? I mean, why did some people have not as qualified people, or does anybody have any background? I mean, why
the background on the legislation that was introduced is that in Howard County, the Student Board of Ed member was the deciding vote in the reopening discussion, and someone who was against the reopening, who is a legislator, decided that he wanted to take away the rights of the Student Board of Ed member because he didn't like the way they vote.
Have there been any voices against the student member? I don't remember hearing anything over the past several years that objected to the conduct of the full vote. Are there any reasons why in the past this has been a contentious issue here in Anne Arundel County?
I believe there was some legislation proposed a year or two ago that narrowly failed around this. I think I'm fuzzy on the history, to be perfectly honest with you, but I believe there's been some discussion over the years around having student members take leadership positions, run for vice president or something like that, which raised some controversy at one point. And so there's been a bit of a drumbeat in some quarters around this for a little while. And the latest issue in Howard County, in the midst of what we all know has been a pretty contentious time around schools, I think just emerged. And there had been some other legislators previously who had put forth some legislation hoping to curtail in some way the voting rights of our particular member.
I mean, the operating budget of the county is over $1 billion, and that's quite a decision to put upon a 17-year-old, right? So there's a cautionary voice. Yes, Sheila.
Yeah, just a little bit of historical perspective. There are student members on many boards around the country, but they are restricted in that they do not have voting rights on budgets or personnel issues. And so that is where I think they're trying to take us. We are very unique. We are the only jurisdiction in the country out of the 4,500, I believe that there are, who have a student member with full voting rights. So.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, Madam Secretary, do you have a copy there to read of the the proposition?
Yes, the motion was that the Annapolis Education Commission affirms its continued support of the full voting rights of the AACPS Board of Ed student member.
Okay, if there is no other discussion, let's move forward to a vote. Well, first off, let's see if we can do by show of hands here. I don't see a whole lot of contention. All those in favor, raise your hand, please. Okay, Kayla.
Wait a minute.
Odessa,
Okay, I got it.
and all those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I show that as a unanimous pass. All right, is there any other new business from the floor? Joanna?
Just a quick follow-up on an earlier question I looked into. I think it was Jess who had asked about what happened with some teachers who went hoping they had an appointment and were told they had to take their shots elsewhere. Apparently that was some confusion. The statement we had previously from the superintendent was that teachers could get their shots wherever they could get their shots. There apparently have been some folks, not necessarily AACPS folks, sharing these links that the county sends out for appointments. And those are unique links. You're not supposed to share them. And so between that and obviously the short supply of vaccine that we have, when some teachers got there for their appointments, there was confusion around that. But that's where we are. But the plans I told you about are ready to go at any moment. So I believe Dr. Arlotto and Dr. Kalniaraman talked this afternoon specifically about this to make sure that that was clear. So we should be good to go to move forward for teachers being vaccinated. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Any other new business from the floor?
The vaccination, that's not required, is it, Ms. Tobin, Dr. Tobin? Is that required for teachers to be vaccinated?
And Dr. Tubman, is there an understanding that the teachers will have the opportunity to get their second shot before they are being required to be in the buildings? Because we are hearing a number of teachers are getting their accommodations denied.
I don't know. That's what we're going to hear more about next week, because everything has changed. Everything keeps changing day to day in terms of what the state guidance is and what the vaccination situation is.
And hopefully you can remind them that vaccine is not a faucet you turn on and off. It is an opportunity to the body to build slowly over time an immunity system response.
Our vote to move forward with a beginning of reopening and hybrid no later than March 1st was in accord with Dr. Kalyaraman's advice that night, based on his understanding of
that shots were going to begin January 18th, 19th, 20th, which they have not.
So we will hear an update.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, I mean, according to my understanding, that the second vaccination is scarce. I mean, you know, so if you get the first one and you can't get the second one, there may be a problem. I mean, you know, with the effect of the first one.
The CDC just announced that they're extending the time period between the vaccination from 4 weeks to 6 weeks. So it gives more people to get the second dose. It's proven to be more effective waiting 6 weeks instead of 4.
Okay, but will it be available though? They're running out of it.
It gives them more time to have it for availability so that it's coming in, so they have enough time and pre-plan these the second dosage.
Okay, thank you, Kayla.
Is there any other new business from the floor?
With regard to the vaccines, the only concern I have is that from what I understand, the people that I know that have gotten the both doses, they tend to have a reaction, you know, a mild reaction after the second dose could be up to like a 48-hour flu. So my concern is if we're giving teachers the first dose and then putting them all back in the classrooms and then they all get their second dose and need to take a day or two off, are we going to have enough substitutes to cover all of those if we've now got everybody back in the classroom? First of all, the teachers aren't at full immunity by then, but also if they're all getting the second dose around the same time, that could be an awful lot of teachers that are out of school all at the same time. And are we going to have enough subs to cover all of those classes?
No.
Actually asked those. Yep.
We don't envy your job, Joanna. Thank you for doing it.
All right. Well, if there's no other new business from the floor, then our next meeting in February is scheduled for the 4th Wednesday of February. That's February 24th at 6 p.m. Please forward any agenda items to our Vice Chair, Enid Collison-Lee, by that previous Thursday, the 18th. At 12 noon, and we look forward to seeing everyone next month. So we'll accept a motion to close the meeting here. Okay, it's so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? The motion carries. We'll adjourn until February. Thanks very much for your continued interest in education in our capital city.